Hannah Belmont. Welcome to the Manufacturing Shakeup. We are thrilled to have you here with us today from Westminster Tool.
Hi, guys. So happy to be here. Really appreciate the invitation.
We are so excited to have you here to hear about your career journey, about the cool things that you're doing at Westminster Tool. And specifically, I know we're really intrigued to hear about your onboarding process and the ways that you've shifted your organization over the last several years to attract the types of employees that you want.
Yeah, so as the talent development manager here at Westminster Tool, working with a little bit, on one side in the HR world on recruitment and attracting the next generation of manufacturers, and then one foot in the technical arena where, working on developing actual technical cross-training for our employees. So I'm really excited that I get a chance to work with both of those in my current role.
Yeah, you know what though, before we hear about that though, Hannah, there's so much about Westminster that we love, but we also knew your predecessor, and so we're excited that you're in her role now and taking that work, that legacy work even further. Can you just give us like a 1 minute snippet of your very cool background and how you came to be in your role?
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those, like a lot of people in manufacturing, my path is kind of goes like this. It's a little bit winding, but it's never a straight line. But this is my family's business. So I grew up in a machine shop. This is my dad's mold making machine shop. But I never knew I wanted to get into manufacturing growing up. I actually went to school for journalism, and I wanted to be a reporter. And my first job out of college was writing and reporting about manufacturing. And I found how much I loved traveling all over the country and going into facilities and shop floors and learning about people's businesses and how they make things and how companies grow. And that kind of, the more I thought about the manufacturing industry as a whole, and the more I was writing about it across the country, the more I really wanted to be a part of, a really major project and be a part of something that means something. And I looked no further than my family's company, which has done some really exceptional things for company culture and just what it means to be a small family business. So today I'm really excited to be a part of that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Well,
I'm going to start a jar and I'm going to start adding a quarter every single time we get to hear the thing you just said, which is like, I never knew how much I wanted to be in manufacturing until I was really
Oh, yeah.
I like that it's a zigzag journey, not a linear journey. Like honestly, that's one of the coolest things about our beloved manufacturing sector is like how many people land there with the exact idea you just expressed.
Yeah, that I didn't know this is where I was going to end up. And I love how I got here.
Right?
and I love the fact that, your background isn't in talent management,
Yeah.
and that's where you are. Can you talk to us a little bit about the journey in terms of culture at
Yeah.
Westminster Tool?
Yeah, so I can't take credit for a lot of the projects that I've been working on today. My family's company has really been on a 15-year journey. We've been around, for a little over 25 years and, going on 30 years. And where we're at today has been definitely a long journey. But when I started at Westminster Tool, I started in marketing, and the human aspect is such a huge component of what we do here. So at the time, it kind of made a lot of sense for me professionally to start to kind of work in that human element. And then for Westminster Tool, we used to be a really standard mold making shop, and we made a lot of decisions along the way of how we were going to change that, both from a business case and from a workforce case. So
Can I
it's
stop you
definitely
there?
been a long
Because
journey.
like you just made me think of something. I'm sorry, we're really interruptive on this program
No,
sometimes.
you're
It's
fine.
just
I
a
love it. I
thing.
love it. Ask away.
But like what you just said was like we were standard and then we decided to change. Like hold the presses because like why? Like what was
Fine.
going on? Like what made you say like that doesn't just happen. People don't just say like, well, we're in business doing this and this and this and we think we're changed. Like
Yeah.
There
And
had like
right.
why? What happened?
And you know, we didn't have the luxury of changing because we wanted to change. We, you
Mm,
know, over 10 years ago, we changed because we had to. There was a little bit of desperation there in the sense that we had a lot of the same problems that a lot of small manufacturers in the state of Connecticut have. We had an aging workforce. We were struggling to recruit skilled people. We were struggling to diversify our business. You know, our customer base was changing. Technology was evolving. I mean, all of the standard challenges that most small businesses face, we
yeah.
face them all at the same time. And we really were forced to figure out how to change.
Mm,
So the leaders in the company around that time kind of got into a room and said, well, what does our perfect company look like? If we had everything we wanted and we were doing everything amazing, what would success look like? And that's where the conversation about culture really started.
Mhm.
mm,
And it was a
mhm.
disruptive. You know, usually when we talk with organizations about bringing cultural change about, their biggest fear is I don't want to disrupt the apple cart. I don't want to lose people. I don't want to slow production. I don't really want to invest money and take people off the line.
Oh,
So
it doesn't matter, right? It
what,
doesn't matter.
right, it
That's
doesn't,
another
culture
one,
doesn't matter
right?
is like in capital letters. What, you know, people are just coming, they want to do a job and go home. And, you know,
Yeah.
we know that's not true. You know that's not true. But like, what did they have to overcome in their own resistance to start
Well,
making those changes?
yeah, I mean, it's the biggest question because I get this question all the time when I'm talking to other small manufacturers that are saying, hey, we love what you guys are doing, but it seems really hard. And the reality is it was really hard.
Mhm.
That's why I always start the conversation about cultural transformation with the disclaimer, hey, this is 10 years in the making, and a lot of
Yeah.
people worked on this to get us to where we are. And I
Mhm.
think it's natural for businesses to think about their ROI when you think about cultural change, right? You're a business, you're trying to serve your customers. And the talk about the debate about company culture and making money doesn't have to be two separate things, mutually
Mhm.
exclusive things. For
Right.
us, the growing pains were we changed what was expected of our employees, and that wasn't for everyone. You know, we were a standard tool shop in the sense that we were how we recruited, how we onboarded, how we trained, how we promoted, the types of customers we picked. We really thought very conventionally about that until we started losing money as a business.
Mhm.
So we looked at inspirations from across the globe. We looked at a lot of European influences for educational models and training resources. We looked at other amazing companies just in our neighborhood here in Connecticut. And it all came back to culture, which meant that, you know, we were going to change how we recruit. And we were going to stop looking at the same type of person to bring into the tool shop. And this was, you know,
Mm.
the standard person that we were looking for was, you know, 5 to 7 years of experience, somebody who's really motivated and direct and hardworking. And all of these adjectives kind of were non-negotiables for all of the team. And we just found we weren't successful for that.
I
So our
just heard two things that were like,
first step was
yeah. Yeah, sorry, I'm doing it again. I'm interrupting you.
yeah, no,
I get so it's like so
it's a
there's a
long journey.
shake-up factor that I want to signpost this for our audience because I think it really matters. Like if we're looking at the shake-up factors of like what do companies like Westminster need to do? I mean, like obviously there's no perfect order for how they go about making the kind of really dramatic change that you've made over time. But the jump-in point sounds like giving up conventional thinking. That was what I just heard you say. You said we were thinking very conventionally about a bunch of things like onboarding, profit, how we teach, how we trained. And you had to be willing to give that up. And part of what is really fascinating there is that feels really unsafe. Like that feels really scary for like we see that in our client companies all the time where they're like, wait, you're asking us to do something really differently because human beings fear change. So like inside those scary conversations, like how did you overcome some of the fear around that? Like how did you
Well,
make for that?
we kind of had to that original meeting that I talked about where the leaders kind of came into a room and said what a success looked like. That kind of took the scariness away because when all of the people in your company, or at least the people who are changing the trajectory of the company, your leaders, when everyone's on the same page about what's important at the end of the day, what are those core values that make you different from your competitors, the core values that make you a place that people want to work at. When you agree on those, the rest gets a little bit less scary, because now every small incremental change you make is supposed to align with those core values, align with those goals. So goal settings started first. And that's kind of how the journey began. Is we said, let's agree on what success looks like. And then let's stick to that. Let's hold ourselves accountable to those goals. And then the rest gets a little bit easier.
So what's the difference between hiring for experience and hiring for core values? Like, what's your orientation when you're looking at somebody and you're talking with them about being a potential employee at Westminster? How do core values come into the conversation and the interview? And what is that shift from looking for 5 to 7 years to looking for core values?
We wanted to think realistically, what value can we add to a new hire, and what are the things that you can't teach? So when we started thinking about core values of what's important to our company, these are kind of non-negotiable characteristics that we didn't think we could successfully teach somebody how to do. So one example of that is how to be dynamic. We want our employees to be able to be flexible with change, embrace change openly, not resist change, and be willing to try anything new, to learn something new. That's something that we can't really teach in orientation, but we know that it's an important part of our culture. So we prioritized that over skill set. We said, you know what, if the 5 to 7 years of experience plus employees aren't working out, there's not an alignment of core values there. We're clearly not on the same page. So we said, all right, we're going to throw that out the door. We're going to stop looking at resumes. And we did this about, I would say, 8 to 10 years ago. We stopped looking at resumes. We didn't really require them. And instead, the entire interviewing process was based on, do you have these core characteristics inherently? And we would ask questions related to those core values, which include being dynamic, being motivated, being curious, and having integrity. And we made those the 4 that kind of became the cornerstone of our whole business, really.
So when you have somebody that is like, I'm super curious, how do you gauge that being demonstrated? Like, because some of what you're describing, those can be sort of, they're intangibles. They're hard to spot unless you know a person. So, because
it is hard. It's hard to score based on something that's really amorphous. And so what we did was we developed a scoring system, and we really thought strategically about how we have conversations and ask questions for new hires. And again, I mentioned that recruitment was a really great starting point for us. It's hard to start from the ground up. So as you're bringing in new people, that's a really great way to adopt those kind of changes on a small scale. But we would ask questions related to anecdotes. So for instance, like being dynamic, that's one of our biggest core values. We would ask anecdotal kind of questions related to, tell me about a time that you had to get outside of your comfort zone. And that person's answer about comfort and discomfort is going to tell us a lot about their resistance or acceptance of being willing to change. And then we'd score based on those evaluations.
We could talk all day. And I want to fast forward with you to once you've hired someone, the onboarding process. Can you talk about the 2 to 3 weeks that happen when somebody starts with Westminster?
Yeah, so that hire for character, train for skill, that's kind of like the binding contract that we're offering to new employees that makes us a place that people want to work at. And the reality is we kind of have to hold up our end of the deal, which is you bring the core values, we have to be able to grow you from the ground up. So part of our end of that bargain is having a longer orientation process. We spend 2 to 3 weeks before they really touch any parts or machines, just getting them acclimated to our culture, learning things like emotional intelligence, mindfulness and meditation, communication skills, conflict management, continuous improvement, all dedicated to some of those soft skills that are so often, left behind when you talk about bringing on somebody new.
We call them essential skills, actually.
Yeah.
We never call them soft skills because they're the main skills, aside from operating a piece of machinery correctly. It's how you communicate with the other people around you and make work, right? And those are all the emotional intelligence skills that you just described.
Yeah.
So
Well, and when was the last time any of us thought of, gee, that conflict felt so soft,
like that was easy.
easy, right?
A
Like,
challenging conversation didn't suck at all. Like it's like we look at hard conversations in a certain way, and we kind of incorporated that into our orientation process. Was how do we change the way people look at challenges and conflict and make it a positive? Give them the right tools to tackle it, especially when they don't have the technical or professional skills to kind of relate it back to.
right. Yeah. So I'm hearing so far, I mean, I agree, Ellen, we could like do this all day.
All day.
But I'm hearing like three shakeup factors that I really want our audience to take away. One is be willing to break from conventional thinking, like be brave, right? And like challenge ourselves, which sounds really trite, but there are ways we can do that, right? There are ways we can support ourselves to do that. Two, I'm hearing this hire for values, not just like hire for personality, but like really hone in on the intangibles, right? So really honing in on those intangibles and figure out not just hire for personality and hire for fit, which is kind of commonplace language, but what I hear Westminster did was they figured out a way to recognize the exact intangibles that they want in their people. Mm-hmm. And so giving that definition and a way of eliciting that from people by getting them to tell great stories seems genius to me. And then the third one that I love is you're taking this long view of onboarding, right? That's the third shakeup factor that I think is super juicy that a lot of our manufacturers need to hear loud and clear is like half of companies don't have great onboarding, manufacturing.
If any at all.
Yeah.
How many companies have we talked to where we say, what's your onboarding process? And they go, well, it's in our HR manual, but the reality is that it never lines up. A person starts and we can't get all the things that are in our plan to happen. So the person basically just has one person to relate to. And then they say, and we have huge turnover.
Yeah. And we definitely like our style also isn't for everyone. For people that don't really want to grow or don't want to have to be, they want to really flourish in their comfort zone. That's totally okay. We're okay with that too. We'll learn that pretty quickly. If we bring somebody on board that really fits our core values, but it's just not the right place for them, we're okay with that. We're never gonna, it's a lot easier for us to build lasting relationships without fear of them going somewhere else. But ultimately, the first 60 days of any employee's success is really determined in that first window. So the first 60 days is where we're focusing. The first few weeks is orientation, but we have a very hands-on 60-day process that is going to give them all the tools for success. And you can really tell pretty easily, is this person going to be a long-term fit just within those first 2 months?
I'm going to call that like a shakeup factor number 4 that we've learned from Westminster today, because the willingness to say no and the willingness to not have a fit is so contrary. I speak English sometimes. It's totally contrary to like the desperate quality that we're seeing so many people have when it comes to hiring right now. We're like, we just need warm bodies. But getting the higher quality, better fit warm bodies serves
everyone.
Yeah.
Serves everyone.
And there's so many it's a small business approach too, for the larger Connecticut businesses that are hiring thousands and thousands every single year, obviously their strategy is going to be a little bit different, but we're a 30-person shop. So, we can't bring on everyone. And that's why we have the luxury of a wait list right now. We're really proud to tell other manufacturers we have a hiring wait list,
That's
kind of rare.
Yeah.
Well, Hannah, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you this afternoon. And before we leave, we want to ask you one question. When you think about shaking up manufacturing, if you were going to tell somebody who's in talent management, who's trying to look at moving the needle on talent within their organization, what's one small move that they can take to shake up manufacturing in their organization?
Create some kind of vision, define it and stick to it. Hold yourself accountable to it. A lot of companies will have mission and vision statements, or they'll have a value proposition, or they'll have core values. And they're certainly helpful for me in my job as HR. But the reality is that you need to clearly define what success in the company is and what makes you unique, and then make it a cornerstone of every single thing you do. I mean, this isn't just recruiting that we follow these core values. I mean, we pick our customers and our vendors based on these core values.
Love it.
We develop new products based on these core values. So having that original mission and vision that the leaders in your company can all agree on is kind of that first step. And it's the hardest step. So once you get that out of the way, everything else can really happen a lot more organically over time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming today. It was so much fun talking with you. Can't wait to hear more about what you're up to at Westminster.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the series, and thank you again so much for having me, guys.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Manufacturing Shakeup. You can listen to us each week on your favorite podcast app. You'll find us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. And if you use the hashtag MFG Shakeup, we will see them and really appreciate your spreading the word about what you're hearing and learning each week. Hey, Jenny, did I forget anything?
Yes, you did. Here's the most important bit. You may have learned something from that guest. They may have told a story about, oh, here's what I did and here how it worked. Here at the Manufacturing Shakeup, we are all about action. So take some nugget of what you heard today and put it into practice, even if it's small and experimental. Get busy, get dangerous, go shake stuff up, and bring people along with you. Go take an action, post it on social media. Let's have some fun.
The Manufacturing Shakeup is sponsored by the Connecticut Office of Manufacturing, produced by Maselli Productions and Gale Communications, and hosted by the Boulder Company.